Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Facebook Live while mentoring matters in business. First, I want to take a moment to welcome our replay viewers. We so appreciate you. And I want to share just a little bit about what we're talking about tonight. And so I have Master Mentor Chris Moss, and we are going to talk about why mentoring matters in business. So something I was sharing with Chris earlier was that I think sometimes when we're speakers, we're writers, if we're entrepreneurs, we feel like we have to be like one person shows. And we oftentimes don't realize not just the benefits of mentoring, but also why it's okay to need a mentor. So Chris is going to talk to us a little bit about that today. If mentoring is something that you've been talking about with peers, with associates, or if you know others who could benefit from knowing a little bit more about mentoring, even if they're not in business, because I think there's going to be a lot of really good information here that's applicable to all different facets of life, I would just ask that you would share this video. I hope you get a lot out of it. I know that we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. So with that, I want to just introduce Chris a little bit. So Chris lives in Arizona, and I have known Chris, gosh, Chris, has it been 4 years or has it been 3? It's
Yeah.
probably been 4. And we know each other through MOPS, which stands for Mothers of Preschoolers, which is an organization that equips and encourages women with young children. And those women with young children frequently need mentors. But Chris has made mentoring, she's turned it from a passion to a business. And so I couldn't think of anybody better to have this conversation with. So what I'd like for you to do, Chris, first of all, you're welcome to say anything else about yourself that I may have left out, but then I'd like to lead into sort of for you, what is a mentor? If you could define that for our audience.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm honored to be here. Thank you for letting me come in
You're welcome.
and play in your space. I have been a mentor for about 15 years. I started in 2000 in Michigan. I was recruited to be a mentor, and I thought this is the lamest thing I've ever tried. And I found out, like, from the first downbeat that it was the perfect fit for me. I'm kind of a psychologist, but not really. I studied psychology, and I was never, ever able to finish our statistics class. Took it 3 times, withdrew every time before I got an F. So I finally went to my guidance counselor's office and I said, just get me out of here. And we figured out I could graduate with a degree in liberal studies with a concentration in psychology. And I guess I've always looked for a place to put it. So there I was at a very advanced age, finally being able to use my psychology experience. So what I recognized at that time in 2000 was that things were changing. Mentors used to be disciplers. And so there was this kind of weird thing going on with people who wanted my time. People wanted me to hang out with them off meeting time and give them time to, teach them about being a Christian mom, a Christian businesswoman, a homemaker, a working mom, or whatever. And what we discovered was no one has time for that. And that really is where the difference is in mentoring. When you're going to be in a discipling relationship, you are going to sit at the feet of your discipler and soak up all of their wisdom on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, whatever. But when you are mentoring, a lot of times I mentor and I don't even know, because people are just in the same area with me. We're at the same table. We're in the same conversation. I just had, about the 100th woman come to me and say, I remember when you said blah, 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 blah. And I honestly have to look at them and say, I said that? Because mentoring happens for me without a whole lot of thinking about it. So I've actually had to kind of go up to 20,000 feet to look down at what I do to kind of get a picture. And what I can say is that for people who are looking for a mentor, there's someone that comes along and they fill this sacred little space, and it brings them clarity. And when I realize I'm doing that with someone, it's an awesome feeling. But I know that I'm doing it without realizing it probably more often than I do realize it. Does that make sense?
That does. So, what I'm hearing you say, and first of all, let's just give a couple of shout outs because we've got Lori here and then we have Jen as well. So they're joining us tonight. So you mentioned a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. So one being that a mentor provides clarity. And I'd like to explore that a little more in a second because I feel like people say coaches provide clarity. So I'd like to know a little bit about that difference. But the other thing that I heard you say is that, mentoring doesn't have to be this stiff, formal relationship. I mean, it can be, right? But
Mhm.
in some instances, mentoring can be very intuitive and almost organic.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
for those who are watching, if somebody has had a mentor in their life and they would like to give them a shout out, I'd love to see that in the comments. I'd also like to know how many mentors you've had in the course of your life, because I think sometimes we think that a mentor is somebody we encounter when we're a child, right? And they carry us all the way through to adulthood. But I think it's not uncommon to have a number of mentors in your life or to have mentors who serve certain functions.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that difference between coaching and mentoring.
Well, I think in this particular space that we feel now, um, there are so many mentors out there. It wasn't always that way. And there's a lot of people who are more like coaches, but they call themselves mentors. And in my
Mhm.
mind, the difference between a mentor and a coach is that the coach is someone who markets themselves and gets paid. I don't get paid for mentoring. Nobody ever has written me a check to mentor. In my business, I recruit and I train mentors, and churches pay me to train their mentors. So
Got
that
it.
is the difference between, in my mind, between a coach. I actually looked into coaching for a while because I have this sort of pseudo degree in psychology. So psychology is the study of the past to clarify the future. The coaching is somebody who just takes what's right here in the present to project into the future. And a
Mm.
mentor, I think, is somebody who just helps you along the way. Um, I am also the wife of a CEO, and I think that gave me a lot of training for the day that I became a mentor. Because as the wife of a busy CEO, you just sort of run around after them and get things done that they don't have time for. And so it always puts me in a support sort of frame of mind. And that, I think, prepared me when I met moms who were struggling to be supportive.
Got it. Well, and I like that definition, right? So, succinctly, coaches get paid, mentors don't. I think there tends to be a little bit of a mutual relationship too with mentors, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't coach your coach, but with a mentor, there can be, I think, a bit of a reciprocal relationship.
I will tell you that the moms that I've mentored have given me more than I've ever given them. I learned how to be a good mother in law before I ever was one. I learned how to be a good grandma before I ever was one. Um, Moms around the table, because I listened. I mean, listening is really key when you are a mentor. So if you're looking for a mentor, find someone who listens to you.
Mhm.
Um, but um, if you listen, you will get mentored as well. It really is much more reciprocal.
I like that. I mean, exactly, right? It is that reciprocal relationship.
Mhm.
Now, something else that I know that we want to talk about is situational mentoring. So I
Mhm.
know for me, I just I have a full life and there's lots of different parts of me. There's the mom part, there's the wife part, there is the human part, and then there's
Mhm.
the professional side. There's my day job, but then there's the business I'm building. And so I have what I call my executive board of my life, right? So it's this kind of a collection of mentors
Mhm.
who I reach out to for various things because like my mom mentors, a lot of them were stay-at-home moms. I have a couple who are working moms, but they're not the best to advise me or to make suggestions in my professional life, but they're really great on the home front.
Mhm.
So to me, that's what situational mentoring is. But do you want to talk a little bit more about situational mentoring?
Sure. I have a couple of business mentors that I adore, but I also have a faith mentor, somebody who keeps me like on the ball, accountable in my spiritual walk. And um, I kind of look for people who will push me in the right direction for myself personally. Um, so when I was in business, like in the workaday world, not just doing my own thing here at home in my home office, I had business mentors. There were people that I looked up to that if I saw them today, I would have to hug them, and they probably never even knew. Um, um, I find that the um, I have lost my train of thought. Bring me back.
Well, I was curious, maybe you could give us a example of a mentor. Like could you maybe just illustrate a practical like mentoring experience? Like I
Okay.
know you said that you were a better mother-in-law before you were ever a mother-in-law, better grandmother before you were ever a grandmother, but what does that mentoring look like and what has it looked like in your life?
Well, actually, here's a story I would love to tell. Um, I have Kathy Lip is my speaking mentor. I mean, for most of us who've been through leverage, she holds a very special place. And she can mentor me without ever even knowing that she has spoken to
Mhm.
me, in a group. And I feel like I'm the singled out person, and she's speaking directly to me. So she did a talk at her church about the purple hoodie. And she talked about how some of the people that she mentors seem to get stuck. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. And I went straight to my editorial calendar and I started putting dates on everything. Not because she said to do that, but because it was the only way I could figure out that I could get unstuck. So then I put myself on a weekly blogging program and a weekly Facebook live program because I listened to the message about the purple hoodie. It's on YouTube and Tanya's just posted it.
Right, and I'm going to put it in the comments as well.
Um, when somebody takes up that little sacred space that you've created for them as a mentor, it doesn't even matter who they're talking to. You take their words really, really seriously. And you know what? That I can attest, the truth is they can put all their wisdom in this gift box and hand it to me, and it's nothing. I mean, if you open this box, there is nothing in it, nada. Um, and the whole point of that sacred space is that God speaks to you through your mentor in that sacred space, and that's the person we're looking for.
Awesome. So when you're thinking about the benefits of mentorship, I think you've like covered a lot of them, right? It's you get perspective. There's
Clarity.
clarity is a big one. I mean, and I think even clarity and perspective aren't quite the same thing, but they're so, so important. And I think especially with business, and you know, I think of discouragement. I think of how easy it is, especially when you're a writer, you're a speaker, or you're an entrepreneur. So much of your business is personal, right? You're putting yourself out there. You're
Yeah.
you're playing in a field where you have a personal stake. You have deep investment. And so when something doesn't go as planned, that hurts at a level deeper than if you're going to work at
Yeah.
the bank every day and you just have a bad day at the office. And I
Hmm.
think where a mentor really comes into play is they put those disappointments in perspective for you. Do you have
Right.
an example of either where you've helped a mentee have greater perspective when things have gone not so well, or maybe where a mentor has helped you?
You know, before leverage, I um, had never met Sherry Gregory. And um, I take it back. It was after my first leverage, and Sherry was speaking in Scottsdale. I live in Arizona. Scottsdale's 20 minutes up the road from where I live. I thought, I'm going to go see Sherry. So I contacted her and let her know I was going to be there. And I said, I know they don't give you a lot of money. I mean, we as Christian authors and speakers, we know we don't make a whole lot of money.
Mhm.
So I offered her a place to stay here. And I know that Kathy and Sherry don't do that very often, but she agreed to stay with me at my house. And let me just tell you, it was like a 3-day brain dump. And the things that I got clarity on in that time space. Now, remember, she was going to Scottsdale to speak,
Right.
2 and 3 times a day. And in the middle, she was here resting. And then we would sit around, we just talked and talked and talked, because I didn't know where to take my business next.
Mhm.
I just knew that where I was uh, wasn't wasn't really what I was hearing from God, and I didn't know how to get to where I needed to be. And I had so many misconceptions. And I think the one thing that Sherry did as a mentor for me that day, that in that time period, was she dispelled a lot of the misconceptions. And I would never have known that I was seeing things incorrectly, because if you look at this little space that I'm sitting in, this is where I do my work. This is where the magic happens. And so there's not a whole lot of perspective. It is
Mhm.
teeny. And so it was wonderful to have somebody come and share a new perspective and help me get a more distant vision of what it was that I was supposed to be doing.
So I think it's fascinating that you bring that example up. One of the Facebook Live interviews that I've done is with Diane Doko Kim, and she had talked about how she gets and has gotten as much out of sitting at a kitchen table
Hmm.
with people who are a few steps ahead of her and just seeing how they interact and how they handle stress and how they make those like split second decisions when things don't go well,
Hmm.
as she has had in formal coaching appointments or more formal settings where it's like, okay, you are going to teach me how to do this one thing.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's what you're saying. You invited Sherry Gregory to stay at your house. She was doing life. And while she was doing life, she was helping you get perspective on things that were really meaningful to
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
And I feel like that leads us into the next point, which is, how do you choose a mentor? Like, do you have any suggestions?
First of all, I always look for somebody who's a few steps ahead of myself. And honestly, we talk about age a lot, and I think it matters more when you're younger, because now I am officially old, and a lot of the people who mentor me are 10 and 15 years younger than me. And the moms that are the heart of what I do as a mentor, they are much younger than I am. And I believe that these are intergenerational friendships where, um, actually, the first people that I mentored back in 2000, their mopettes are now
Mhm.
in high school, going to homecoming and prom. They are prime candidates for me to recruit and train as mentors now. And that is really the purpose of what I am doing now in my business. Is I want to recruit and train the people that I've already mentored, because I've already set an example for them. And so if you choose somebody who's a few steps ahead of you in whatever it is that you aspire to become, that's really helpful. You want to make sure that you share at least 3 top values with them. So if your top value is family, and you see somebody that has an incredible ministry, but their family is falling apart, then they may not be the mentor for you. I remember early on in my Christian walk, there were 2 women that I absolutely adored. One abandoned her kids all the time to go do ministry, and the other took things very selectively so that she could manage her children the way she wanted to.
Mhm.
Neither one of those, I use the word abandonment. She had, extended family that could care for her children, but it was easier for the first mom to leave her kids. And so my values were different. So I chose the other one as my mentor. I'll never regret that for me. Now, there may be other extenuating circumstances for somebody else. Maybe somebody else's values aren't that deeply entrenched. That's just fine. But their top 3 values, you need to make sure align with yours.
Oh, I think that's so good. That is so good. Somebody you want to trade places with, you
Yep.
aspire to become, somebody who shares your core values.
Mhm.
Bethany says hi. She's sending you some hearts.
Hi, Bethany.
So do you have a couple of other ideas on what to look for in a mentor?
Go to writers' conferences, speakers' conferences, meet people there, talk. One of the things that I do a lot of is intergenerational studies. And I do a lot of comparing generation to generation. I went to a writers' conference, and this lady who was African American completely shot me down. She said, that works for the majority culture, but it won't work for me. It's different in my culture. And I thought that was a very interesting insight, because, I would never have known that. And it was nice to have that perspective, because now I know who my audience is.
Mhm.
So internships. I'm an intern at Grit and Grace Girls podcast, and I have learned from the women in that group. I have gained contacts. One of the things that you want from a mentor is somebody who will advocate for you. Um, I I probably am old enough now that I'll not be the first person somebody chooses to write a book, that a publisher will look at to write a book, because I don't probably have 10 years to write multiple books for somebody. And that's what publishing houses are looking for. I'm totally fine with that. I got a late start. I'm totally fine with that. I'm doing what I love, and it doesn't have to be, under the guise of a book contract. The one thing that bothers me about that is that then I will never be able to mentor other people in book writing. But I think those are the things, those are the places, the writing and the speaking and the engagement that you have with other people who have like-mindedness. I would actually consider, I listened to several podcasts, a lot of them about intergenerational communication. I'm preparing now to train mentors for Generation Z when they become parents, because they are a completely different ball game than millennials are. And I think one of the really important things is to always engage, ask questions. Let the mentor know that their words are making a difference to you. And I just recently had a friend come from San Diego to come visit me. She and I were in a class together. Oh, this is interesting. She gave me this years ago. I taught a class. It's olive wood. It's from Israel, and there's a funny story behind it because it's got lotus blossoms on it. Um, I bought a T-shirt once with a lotus blossom on it because I thought it was a burning bush. I bought it at a Christian shop, and I thought it was a burning bush, and I thought that was a really cool idea. And anyway, so when somebody said, "Oh, you're wearing a lotus blossom," and I went, "Oh, what?" So it's a very common motif that I just was never exposed to it. Anyway, my friend came to visit me, and she told me about some of the things that I'd said in the class that I was teaching when we first met. And I honestly don't remember saying those things, but it was nice to get that reflection all these years later. And darn it, I am going to recruit her to mentor someday.
Well, so on that topic, so let's say somebody's watching, because you've given us some great ideas on how to find mentors. And I think some of us can just flop that advice if we're interested in mentoring and want to be good mentors. But, if somebody comes up to you and says, you know what, can I be a mentor? I know you mentioned that age doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
You can be a 22-year-old mentor, that's okay. But what would you say are the qualities that I should have already, like I should possess, or maybe I should develop if I want to be successful as a mentor?
The first thing I would say is don't ever try to do this without some sort of faith in Jesus. Because when the demands come, and they will be demands, um, they will come fast and furious. And you need to be able to, you know, with the heart and mind of Jesus, you need to be able to discern which ones are really top of mind, which are really the crisis situations, and which ones are a want or something that they can probably figure out themselves. How many of them actually need your attention? Um, my greatest example was my friend, my mom's friend Mandy, who was a single mom, and she was stuck at home with a sick child and couldn't get out. And so she sent out an SOS on Facebook on our MOPS page and said, Q has a fever of 104 and I have no Pedialyte left. I was at her house in 20 minutes with Pedialyte. I do not have Pedialyte in my pantry. I had to stop at the grocery store and still get to her house in 20 minutes. That was a crisis situation. Q needed that to get better. But then I've got other moms who call me and say, can you watch my kids? And I thought, you know, I'm a mentor, but I'm not a babysitter.
Mhm.
And as much as I love your children, there are other moms who will trade time with you. Do that. Call me back if that doesn't work, and then it'll be a crisis situation. Um, I have loaned money to moms a million times because they needed to do something right now that they didn't have cash for, and I've always been paid back, always. But it's the heart and mind of Jesus that gives you the wisdom. Again, I can put all my experiences and all my wisdom in this box, and it's still empty. It's still empty. But if I have any wisdom to give, it's because God popped something in this box, and He only does it when I'm in a circumstance where I need it. Otherwise, it just stays empty.
Well, that is both a powerful visual and also a powerful reminder. Not only did you bring up the importance of having faith in Jesus in order to better discern, right? So that you know what you need to do, but also that it's okay to have boundaries. I love what you said. Like, you're a mentor, you're not a babysitter.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I've heard other people say, I'm a mentor, I'm not a doormat, right? Like I can say no to things. And Karen here, she's loving the I'm a mentor, not a babysitter, that it's okay to say no. And I think I know even in business, I've had mentors where I've gone to a mentor and I've said, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Can I get a letter of recommendation? And they've said no. And they haven't said no because they think I'm a terrible person.
Mhm.
They say no because they say, you know what? I'm not the best person to write that letter of recommendation. I can say a lot of great things about you, but I can't say great things about you in the appropriate context for what you need here.
Right.
And then they've pointed me in the direction, like, have you considered reaching out to this type of person, that type of person? Because you need that relationship to write this letter for you. And I have appreciated that because, they could have given me 400 words of adjective, 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 right? But they cared enough about my success that they were willing to tell me no.
That is awesome.
So I think that's huge. So I know we're about out of time, and I want to make sure everybody has your website. You have so many resources on your website related to mentoring and some of the work you do training mentors.
Mhm.
If somebody was to go to your website for the first time, because you do have a fair amount of content, what do you think is like the one thing that they should make sure that they check out?
I would say start with the blog because it changes every day. But one of the things I think, or the people that I am trying to reach are the people who are kind of approaching that empty nest area. They've raised a child or children to a certain amount of independence, and they're feeling lost, and like they have a lot of love still left to give, but they don't really know where to put it. And they know they don't want to do or lead another Bible study. They're done,
Mhm.
because that takes a lot of prep work.
Mhm.
I would tell you that mentorship doesn't take any more prep than what you're doing right now. You sit in your chair, you say your prayers, you read your scripture, and God fills you up for whatever the need of the day is. And it is all situational. And until it becomes something different than situational, you will be prepared to do that. And honestly, when has God's grace not been sufficient for us? I mean, He will be there for us, and no matter what mentoring circumstance we have, you can always refer people out. I have a whole lot of referral places on my website. One of the things that I tell mentors always is to know or have the 800 number for suicide prevention, because postpartum depression is a real thing. Um, and if you're mentoring in business, writers are depressed people as well.
Mhm.
and and I mean, seriously, if you want to be depressed, go ahead, be a writer, because you're always going to be battling that balance between getting it done, because it takes so much mental focus and preparedness, and um, delving into some of the dark places,
Mhm.
so that you can find the light on the other side of it. Sometimes you get stuck in that darkness, and then something interrupts you, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this dark, and you have to pray it away and then move on, and then you have to pray to go back to that place. So yeah, I just think having that information at your fingertips is pretty important.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. I mean, you have given us just a wealth of not just information, but I think some really good perspective, that almost a reality check of what, is reasonable to expect from a mentor, but also if we find ourselves in mentoring relationships, what is reasonable to expect of us. And I think that probably the best nugget that anybody has gotten here is that being a mentor doesn't make you a doormat. It's okay to say no.
Yeah, it
So
is
thank you so much, Chris, for being here, and
absolutely.
for our viewers. If you have gotten value out of this, it's really been a free training from Chris. I mean, this has been phenomenal. Please share this video, and definitely visit Chris's website, find out more about mentoring, but also mentoring training, because I just don't see a lot of those kinds of resources out there in the wild, so to speak.
Mhm.
So, Chris, thank you again for joining us. Thanks to our viewers, and I will be live again tomorrow. So, we will check in then. Have a great night.
Merry Christmas.